Hello and welcome to the Rugby Chat podcast. Please do remember to subscribe on your favorite podcast app. We are on all of them, Acast, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, all of those, SoundCloud, all of those sort of things. And if you are on the iTunes/Apple Podcasts, then please do remember to give us a review, preferably 5 stars. There are apparently other ones available, but hey, you don't want to be going and doing that. It all helps to spread the word and get more people listening, so please do. Also, if you like to watch what happens behind the covers, the show is live on YouTube at 8 p.m. New Zealand time every single Tuesday. You can also join in the discussion on our 5 questions via Twitter. Just follow at DrivingMaul and look out for the questions and use #RugbyChat in your answers. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, and I'll be your host for the next hour or so. And I have 2 wonderful guests, 2 becoming regular guests as well, with me this evening. First up, we have Mike from Real Mike Pullman. How are you doing, sir?
I am feeling about as good as the National Party is right now, so very good.
Oh, we've got all political straight from the off, and but never mind. I have no idea what he's talking about. Politics are not my thing, but hey. There is a big election going on over here in New Zealand if you're listening from other parts of the world. And we also have Ryan from the Sports Tribe app. How are you doing, sir?
Well, I'll bring it back to rugby. I think I'm about as well as North Harbour are right now, so pretty good.
Oh, pumping. Get the beers in there. So we will be talking, actually I'm not sure we don't actually have a question specifically about the Mitre 10 Cup, but yeah, North Harbour, do you see them going all the way and making the finals?
Well, I was pretty confident from the start of the season that they were a chance at making the semi-finals. I was really impressed with their recruitment. They brought a lot of guys back into the union that had left. So guys like Chris Eves, Sean Stevenson, George Pesey's in the squad, like Jared Hoiata and Ben Bolivola as well. So I think they've developed a really good culture there, and it's winning's a habit, and they're starting to get into that habit. So the way things are started, I'm pretty confident that they can make that top 4. Hard to knock off Canterbury though.
Yeah, I'd agree. Looking at the other teams, I think the top 4 is definitely within their grasp, which is really impressive considering they have been promoted last season. Mike, so are you backing North Harbour as well, or are you think Waikato boys can do the business?
I think Waikato are a bit of a lost cause, to be honest. But no, I really like Harbour. I love the players they've got. I love the mix of youth and experience as well. And when you got a guy like Bryn Gatland, great player. But yeah, like Ryan said, it's going to be hard to stop Canterbury. But hey, I'd be very happy to see a Harbour Canterbury final, and Harbour obviously finally knock off the old thing that is Canterbury, who always seem to win. So yeah, good luck Harbour.
And just purely from a travel point of view, I would much rather Harbour got above Canterbury from a seeding point of view, so I can actually get to the game. Whereas getting down to Canterbury, there's no chance. Whereas if Harbour won it, there is a small chance of me getting a ticket. So maybe, just maybe, I could make the final. Anyway, because let's be honest, my Auckland are not going to be there, so my season ticket's not going to get me any of those sort of things. So, for those who want to know, we will be talking about the Rugby Championship, Mitre 10 Cup, Pro 14, and the Farah Palmer Cup as well. So there's going to be lots to talk about this evening, and let's kick off with question number 1. With the biggest challenge to the Rugby Championship so far coming up, what changes do you see for the All Blacks?
I think they should bring back Jerome Kaino. I wrote about that today. Forget about the personal issues. This guy has experience. I know that we talked a lot about Vaifafida, and yes, he had a great game. But just for Kaino's experience and a Springbok against the Springbok team, that I think is going to be a lot better than many are predicting. I would have Kaino there. He's back in training. He's paid his dues. Give him a go. Start him.
Wow, that's a big one to kick us off with. Because we've had Liam Squire who did very well first off. Now Fafita's also done very well in that number 6 jersey role. At the on Saturday night, we were some of the talk was that Kano could be seeing his days could be over in the All Blacks jersey. Ryan, which way do you see it flying?
Yeah, well, I mean, the performance of Fafita, I think, probably came from nowhere and surprised a lot of people just how impressive he was at test level. I think it's going to be a different style of game against the Springboks. So I don't necessarily think that Fafita would get the same opportunities to run with the ball. And I think they need a little bit more of the grunt work at breakdowns. So kind of probably can suit that a little bit better. But Liam Squire played well in the tests against the Wallabies. And he would be hard pressed to be dropped. So it's a big call for the All Black selectors. The good thing about it is you can't really go wrong. No matter which one you pick is probably going to do the business.
Well, the comments.
That's the selection, isn't it? I mean, you've got Fafita, you've got Kino, you've got Squire. I think it's actually going to come down to Squire and Kino. For as much as we're talking about Fafita right now, don't throw him into this sort of situation too early in his All Black career. Yes, he was fantastic against Argentina. There was a comment on YouTube. No, he won't be playing for Auckland this weekend, from what I've heard. That to me is the selection this weekend, and also the fullback position. Is Mackenzie going to get another go?
Yeah, I think we'll see Dag back at fullback. I think it's time to give Mackenzie a rest personally. But I think actually the one area, and Scott on Twitter puts it here, nothing. He correctly says there's won't be anything radical, just incremental tinkering. But the front row stocks are going to get a massive test versus South Africa. So who do you see the front row being this Saturday?
Well, who you bring in at loosehead's going to be massive. Personally, I'd start with Hames. I'm not a big fan of Tonga Fasi. And Laulala's obviously earned his spot at tight head.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. Yeah. Sorry.
No, carry on.
Yeah, sorry about that, man. I'm in complete agreement. Hames is the man. Tonga Fasi's not quite there yet, but yeah, sorry to interrupt you, mate.
And in the second row, we see Sam Whitelock coming straight back in, or maybe even or Barrett to be given the a start for a change.
I think Whitelock and Retallick. I mean, that's a massive head-to-head battle against the Springboks. Whether it's Etzebeth and Mostert, or whether it's Etzebeth and Dutois. So.
Or De Jonge.
I think we've got to go with our top combination there. Or Diago as well, yeah.
Yep.
So, they've got 4 great locks, 4 world-class guys. We've got to go with our top combination.
Yep, and then obviously the final one is probably seeing Sam Cane back in at number 7, I would expect. There is a question mark, obviously, around the 9-10 combination. One of the things we've talked about before is I've talked about before anyway, is combinations. And with TJ and Beauden Barrett both playing at the Hurricanes, and with not Ben Smith, he does play there, but Aaron Smith and Softwager both playing in the Highlanders, do you think it's time to actually maybe give Smith and Softwager a go starting at 9 and 10?
No way. You got to go with Smith and Barrett in this game, man. I mean, Perenara didn't particularly impress me against Argentina. I thought he was all right, but I just think from your number one pairing for the All Blacks is clearly Smith and Barrett. And I think for this game, don't underestimate Springboks and how fast their defensive line is going to be. You've got to go with Smith because he's just got a superior pass.
Yeah, and I think you talk about combinations. I mean, Smith and Barrett have played so much together with the All Blacks now that they have their own combination anyway. I read an interesting point too about Perenara, and I think what has probably been in his favour in terms of trying to get him a start is that he's probably played better as a starter for the All Blacks rather than coming off the bench. I tend to agree with that. I wonder whether maybe Kurbalo gets a look in as the replacement halfback because he is a bit more of a guy suited to coming off the bench. I doubt that happens, but it was something to ponder.
Yeah, with Kurbalo moving on at the end of the season, I wouldn't have thought so.
Yeah, it's true as well.
The I think it was Mike that made the comment, or someone made a comment that that a lot of, especially Aaron Smith, he likes to be the man, and so by putting on the bench, you kind of take that away from him. He doesn't quite have the same strut about him. So that could be part of it. Is that is around being the man and kind of all the confidence that gives to those kind of players. Because let's be honest,
that's just being a halfback. Paul.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Nines are that cocky kind of style, aren't they? Which hey, maybe I just don't understand, but there we go. And I guess the final combination is: does Sonny Bill start, or how do we fit Crossy back in? Crossy back at 12 or at 13?
Yeah, I'd probably stay with Crotty at 13. I think they looked okay against Australia in that combination. We seem to have too many 12s at the moment. We've talked about this before. But I think probably our best combination is still SBW at 12 and Crotty at 13.
Yeah, well, from an experience standpoint, you'd want to go with Crotty and Sonny Bill, and if Crotty is good to go, he deserves that spot. But just on at fullback, I mean, I think a lot of people would say put Israel Dag to start at 15. I reckon they should, and give McKenzie 20 minutes off the bench, because we've seen with so many All Blacks who have gone on to become superstars, and the consensus is that McKenzie's going to be one, right? So we saw with Beauden Barrett, started his career coming off the bench, making that impact. They should try the same formula with Damian McKenzie, because he's clearly not quite there yet as a test starter. So I just wonder if we should, maybe talk about that.
Yeah, I think it's I'm not sure whether it's test starter or as a fullback, and that he has the skills, but maybe that's not the best place for him because height and the high ball has been kind of the issue. His attacking and joining the line, not an issue. Finding space, he did that very well. But it's under the high ball that we've seen that he's been found wanting, really. And I think so. So I think that's maybe. I still think he's going to probably be that sort of 10 reserve 10, and maybe move up after Barrett moves on. So I think it's a matter of next season seeing him have that time at 10 for the Chiefs, so that when he comes back in, he's got experience at 10 and coming off the bench for there. That's personally how I see him contributing rather than being a long-term fullback.
Yeah, and I guess the challenge with picking a bench is, with a guy like McKenzie, he's a bit rocks or diamonds, isn't he? So if you want a guy who comes on and shuts the game down, he's not really your option, whereas Sopawanga can. But if you need a guy who's going to come on and spark something from nothing, so that's trying to get that balance right. And
I think you
got a point, but yeah, it's finding the time to get him the game time in the right situations.
Yeah, I think your wings combination here is all perfect scenario. You've got Rico Ioane and Himo Niscada, so a lot to talk about Naholo as well, but that's not going to happen, is it?
Sorry, I was just checking out some of the Twitter comments that last one, so I missed that. Him for Naholo being coming on. We could see Naholo and Miller Scudder on the wings with Dag at fullback, couldn't we, at this weekend?
Oh, well, I think that I'm not too sure what the status on Rico Ioane is, but I mean, I would love to see him and Scudder start actually, but
that's very true. So there we go. We've given you lots of options for all over the park, and let's see how it will pan out. Next up, with players heading overseas, should New Zealand have a Gatland law system where there are a number of wildcards used to pick European-based players? As we just said, Kerr Barlow is still in the squad, but will not be available from next season. Obviously, players like Cruden and Charlie Fuamina played in the Lions tour and could have gone through to the next Rugby World Cup. So maybe there's an argument for that they should be able to be kept. What are your thoughts, guys, on this kind of on having a wild card selection choice from Europe?
I would say 100% no. I think the big thing that the All Blacks or New Zealand Rugby have in their favour is that lure of the black jersey. If we had a law like this, then guys like Carter, McCaw perhaps, who could attract top dollar in Europe that New Zealand Rugby can't compete with, they would have gone overseas a lot earlier, probably knowing that they would then get picked for the All Blacks.
But if we say have that Hanson's allowed, Gatland's allowed 3 wildcards. That's how the Welsh system works now. So say Hanson was only allowed to pick 3 players from Europe as a maximum, and the players knew that. So if Carter went overseas, would the others dare go because they know that Carter's obviously got one of those slots?
Well, probably not, but we want our top players playing in our New Zealand competitions. I think Super Rugby's already struggling as it is. Surely we want guys like Carter playing for the Crusaders. Well, I mean, in this situation now, we're talking about Barrett, aren't we? So I still wouldn't do it.
no, I totally agree. I mean, we've got enough talent here, even if there's a massive injury crisis or suddenly a whole lot of players go overseas. It just goes against, to me, a lot of the direction and the values that New Zealand Rugby have actually laid down over the last few years. So, no, I can't see it happening in any scenario, to be honest.
Obviously, I can't see it happening, but that wasn't it's whether you thought it was a good or a bad idea, which is a different thing entirely. No,
Terrible idea. Terrible idea.
Oh dear, I was wondering how much I would get. Just to bring you kind of the responses from the live chat for those people who are listening to the podcast. Joshua goes very hard no to question 2. Jack goes no, pick players based in New Zealand only. Joshua said our NPC is rubbish enough as it is, and Super 12 games are mainly not at all a draw card. Take away the stars, who really cares? And yet there is that point as well, is that it could hurt the depth that's been created by those competitions and the quality of those competitions as well. Over on Twitter, Max Buckley said, is this a joke question? No way. So clearly the answer, I think we're going to get a resounding 100% no to this suggestion. But I thought it'd be fun to throw out there and see what people's thoughts were on this one. I think it is proving to be a problem for Gatland. We've seen Shane Williams has head over to Saracens. Next year, Dan Bigger is going to Saints, I think it is. So he is exactly the problem you're having is he's losing players, and he's losing more than 3 stars or more than 3 players he'd like to keep at home. So it doesn't reduce. So it doesn't. So he is ending up with more players that he wants to pick than he's going to be allowed to. So yeah, it isn't actually a good thing, but I just thought I'd throw it out there as for a bit of a fun question and see what kind of responses we got. So moving on to question 3, as there was far too much unity on that one. We have seen 3 games in 7 days in the Women's Rugby World Cup, the Mitre 10 Cup and the Currie Cup recently. Is player welfare being sacrificed for TV TV or scheduling reasons. Now, Ryan, this was your one. Do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, well, I think what really sort of sparked my concern this weekend was watching some of the top 4 high school games over the weekend. So for those that don't know, they had the semi-finals on Friday, the final or third, fourth playoffs on the Sunday. So those guys were playing 2 games in 3 days. And obviously to fit them in with television coverage, and I guess to reduce costs and stuff for the schools as well. But yeah, having watched the Women's Rugby World Cup, following the Mitre 10 and seeing these other comps where they are jamming games in, it does concern me that TV, as much as it pays the bills for rugby, we are sacrificing player safety just to get these games in, and I don't think it's right. Particularly for those tournaments where the squads just aren't as big. It's not so bad for things like the European competitions or the Currie Cup where they've got bigger squads. But I mean, these are the assets to the game, and I don't think we're doing right by the players.
Okay, I wasn't aware of the high school one. I think at that age it is a risk, and they definitely shouldn't be doing it at that level. One of the reasons for the Currie Cup that they said was actually they wanted to have a competition where they had home and away games rather than just playing each other once, to try and make a more, what is seen as being the most equitable style of competition. And with the window of opportunity they had for playing those games, that meant they had to A, start during Super Rugby, and B, have a number of midweek games to fit that number of games in. So it's not always I guess the first thing to point out is it's not always TV and dollars that is the driver. Sometimes it is about the style of competition that people want to play in as well.
And I guess that's the same for the Mitre 10 Cup. You know, they're trying to squeeze a competition into a window that it doesn't organically fit in. So we've talked about whether there's an oversaturation of rugby already, and these kind of problems are what get thrown up, where we're trying to fit too many games into not enough days.
Well, what we don't need is we don't need Wednesday night football. We don't need Thursday night football. There's just, like we said every week, it feels like on the show, you know, too much rugby, and just putting the TV stuff aside, I think the unions need to start speaking up about this. Like the Players Association needs to start standing up on this issue, because it's going to affect the players. It's already affecting the players. And at the end of the day, a career-ending injury or a major concussion or whatever, it's not going to affect the administrators of New Zealand Rugby. It's affecting a real human being. You know, there's just too much rugby right across the board.
Well, I think, you know, why do we have Wednesday and Thursday night rugby? The whole point of having those games is so they can fit into a time slot for television, right? Because we don't want the Mitre 10 Cup having 2 games on at the same time that people then have to choose between. That's what I imagine the reasoning is. There's no clashing. And maybe that's what we need to do. Maybe make people have a choice that, you know, we're gonna have 2 games at 2:30 on a Saturday. We're only going to televise 1. If you want to go watch the other game, get down to the ground and watch it. Maybe that's how we lift some of the crowds as well.
But then, yeah, as we discussed last week about what is the Mitre 10 Cup for, and it's not for crowds. It's for developing talent for Super Rugby. So that's part of it. Sorry, I just need to handle something in the live chat. Can you guys? But that's part of around the Mitre 10 Cup. So yeah, so that's But you're right. Definitely the Wednesday, Thursday night comments games are for scheduling, are for filling the TV schedule, and with the Mitre 10 Cup having cross division added games, they don't need the extra games. They've added extra games in there. You could have a competition where you don't have those cross things, and that would take away your need to double up in a week, even if you did have a Wednesday, Thursday night schedule as well. So I think the Mitre 10 Cup one can be excused by for type of competition, in the same way that Currie Cup can for having 3 games in a week in 7 days, rather than just the proper 2.
So what is the answer here though? I mean, because with Mitre 10 Cup rugby, it's becoming an issue. I mean, it was last year, it was the year before that, and now it's really at boiling point. People aren't going to these games. Like, I mean, is it because we're burnt out on rugby? Regardless of how you schedule this competition, the same problem exists. There's too much rugby.
There is. So they did manage to sell out the game last weekend between the All Blacks and the Pumas down eventually, but the game in Albany, as far as I'm aware, still isn't sold out, as far as I've heard. So you can still get tickets for that. So clearly, if you can't sell out a first versus third in the world international game, you're never going to sell out a Mitre 10 Cup game. That's just so that's there's definitely New Zealand, at least Auckland rugby people, public going to games have had their fill for this season, with having 3 Lions games as well as all the Super Rugby. And also the double header with the All Blacks warm-up game for the Lions tour. There has been way too much rugby, especially in Auckland this season.
And let's be honest, the Rugby Championship is getting stale. Since what, 96 we started with the Tri-Nations, and we've had it every year. So every year we're playing these same teams. It's just, the whole good thing about the Lions coming is that, man, it's every 12 years. I mean, there's definitely some excitement, some anticipation about it. Whereas the Springboks, it's like, well, they're coming again next year, so whatever kind of thing.
You're so right. I'm so glad you said that, mate. That's been, it is stale. You kind of know what you're getting from a lot of the games. I mean, yes, the match against the Wallabies in Dunedin was one out of the box, but the other 2 you could sort of predict going in, and it's exactly what happened. And it'd be cool to have like tours come back, like an international team tour in New Zealand, play all the Super Rugby clubs and stuff. But something, dare I say, it needs to be done about, the structure of the Rugby Championship as well. And the answer is not expanding it even more.
Oh, what, you don't want to see Japan, the Fiji, Samoa, Tonga, Hong Kong all joining in the Rugby Championship? That was rhetorical. But okay, so we say the Rugby Championship is now stale. But if we look at the Six Nations have been going for over 100 years or whatever. That hasn't got stale. So why is Rugby Championship stale?
It's because
the All Blacks win everything.
That's right.
Okay, so all right, so it's not the competition that's got stale. People just got bored of the All Blacks winning all the time.
As sad as that sounds, I think that's the case.
You did. Jack Darby in the live chat says we play England more. We want to play England more often. Are we playing them more often? I think he's saying that that perhaps we should get England to come and have a game, because that is building up as now being a massive game because of its rarity. We haven't seen them play each other for a couple of years now, and so that's going to be a big game when it does happen. And it's not happening this year, is it? So,
and that's exactly it. In some regards, the longer we have to wait for it, the bigger it becomes. So yeah, I mean, that's what everyone's sort of gearing up for at the moment. but we still have to keep waiting, and that kind of makes it a little bit more exciting.
So should we build that
Christmas.
200,000 seater stadium ready for that one-off game? That's what we. Christian says in the live chat, says not the All Blacks' fault. Teams can't compete with them. True, it's not their fault, but that's not the point, is it? The point we're trying to make is the competition interesting to watch anymore, rather than who's to blame necessarily for it. And Hugh Roswell says, yeah, the current feeling in Australia is also the Rugby Championship concept is stale. Works for Six Nations, though. Yeah, exactly my point. So we'll see how that pans out. So moving on to question 4 in our list. This is one we got from Twitter last night, which is a great one. Has the slow start to Pro 14 by the 2 South African sides raised any fears about the move? Now, before we go into discuss this, I should probably just, for those that don't know, give you an update as to the scores from the Pro 14 for the 2 South African sides. So in week 1, Ulster beat the Cheetahs 42-19, and Scarlets, the reigning champions, beat the Kings 57-10. Now, initially, to be fair to the South African sides, Ulster, I think, finished 5th last year, or at least in the top half of the table, they always do, and the Scarlets won it. The following week, Connacht beat the Kings 32-10. Now, Connacht were the champions 2 seasons ago, but last season ended up in the bottom half, and Munster, who topped the table last year, beat the Cheetahs 51-18. So the lowest losing margin was 22 points. Should that be a concern?
Well, I think this is probably a question that maybe would be better served being answered in a couple of weeks' time when they've had some home games, because they have to travel for both teams for both the opening rounds. Looking at this week on Tribe, of course, the Kings are at home to Leinster, which is going to be a huge test for them at home, but the Cheetahs are at home to the Zebra. So that'll be a good test to see where they're at compared with one of the other weaker sides in the competition. You also got to temper in the fact that they've come in off the back of a grueling Super Rugby campaign, trying to juggle players for the Curry Cup. There were always going to be some teething issues for them this year, I think, because of those reasons.
I think this is a 6-year deal to start off with. So from that point of view, no, it's not a worry. This is a long-term project. It's not a short-term one. Secondly, to that, the Kings, because of the uncertainty, lost half their squad between Super Rugby and the Pro 14. So trying to build up a squad in time was difficult. At one point, you could look at their squad on Wikipedia, and you could see they had 1 prop and 1 hooker. There was no way they couldn't even put together a match day squad 2 weeks out from this competition. So they've had to borrow players. They've had to get squads together. So for the Kings to do anything this season would be pretty remarkable. So no, I'm not concerned by their results. The Cheetahs were the lesser of the 2 teams in Super Rugby. So to come off Super Rugby, to go straight into this, you'd hope they would hit the ground running to a certain degree. But again, they've got hurt by injuries, losing, I think, their first, second, and third choice fly halves. So losing that number of depth from such a key position, meant they were always going to struggle coming into this. And I think it's going to take them some time to get going. And I think, this is not something to be judged after a couple of weeks, but something to be judged probably not even after this season, but to see how they go next season after they've had a proper pre-season and time to build into it, rather than a last-minute entry into the competition and not having the structures or any planning in place. I look at what happened to the Sunwolves, who had a similar entry into Super Rugby, had about 2 weeks pre-season, and got absolutely thumped in that one as well.
And even the Hug Warriors, I mean, they were a little bit better prepared, but just the kind of planning of being in a season like that, and how you juggle the travel, how you juggle a roster, saw them have some real ups and downs in those opening seasons.
But at least they had the preparation in place on this.
Yeah.
Mike, any thoughts on this one?
No, I think it's too early to say, really, and all the points that you guys raised are very valid. Everyone's going to be saying, "Oh, they haven't performed well, and so they shouldn't be there," and blah blah. But I mean, no, I think it's just way too early to tell, and something had to be done with rugby, and so let's just, I guess, wait and see what happens from here.
Yep, and Ryan, you're going to love what's going on in the live chat here. Jack Darby goes, the Tribe app is great. Thank you very much. An app where you can follow all sports, all your favorite teams, players, stadiums, everything. Oh, the love is flowing in.
Thanks, Jack.
So I think we're in agreement that whilst sure you don't want to see teams losing by 20 odd points every single week, it's too early to get too worried about them and to think they're going to go down the same way as the Italian teams have done, who have never really managed to recover really. So
just on that, Paul, it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts about whether having these teams come in actually is good for the Italian teams, having I guess sides that are perhaps a little bit more at their level to begin with, rather than just being beaten heavily most weeks, as seems to happen.
I'm not expecting the Kings or the Cheetahs to be at the level of Zebra and Treviso. I think even coming in this season, they should finish above them. So I think the level that we're going to see the Cheetahs and Kings settle into is going to be much more around kind of the Dragons, Edinburgh, potentially Connacht, depending on how the new coaching setup goes there. Those sort of sides, and I think they should be above the two Italian sides. Edinburgh with Richard Cockrell there have shown some improvement on their defence and their organisation. So maybe Edinburgh will step up this season, but I'm talking about sort of Edinburgh of previous seasons. The Dragons have also got, I mean, all those three teams I mentioned have all got brand new coaching structures this year. So it takes time for those coaches to bring their change in. At Dragons, it's not even his squad; it's a squad he's inherited. It's going to take him a year or two to actually to mould, to bring in players he wants or he likes, and mould the squad. So I think we'll see them settle for the first season or two seasons amongst those three sides, but above the Italian side is my thoughts. That's where they should sit.
Well, these next 2 weeks then will be a good indicator of that, with Zebra playing both teams.
Absolutely. And when you think that Zebra went through ownership change over the off season, with the Italian Federation having to step in, I believe, because they went bust. So the uncertainty there for the players, did they know they were going to have jobs and that side of things, won't have helped their off season and planning. There was also a lot of talk of Zebra moving to Rome as well. And of course, as we've seen with what's happened with a lot of the players at the Force, it's all good and well to say, hey, yeah, you've got a job with a team. That's fine, but I've also got my house that I bought here, or my house that I'm renting for the next 10 years, next 3 years. My kids are in school. My wife has a job. This kind of thing. It's not as simple as that. There's lots of it's just players just moving. Sure, some of them who are 18, 19 may not have those ties, but it's still unsettling for the players. So I think Zebra could have their minds on off-field issues and being distracted from their play as well. So I'd be very surprised. I would expect both South African teams to go well against Zebra over the next couple of weeks. Wow, God, I wasn't expecting to get asked that one. On to our final question. I guess we're talking about scorelines again. The Farah Palmer Cup has seen an 84-7 and an 82-0 in the opening 2 rounds. Is there a structural issue, or is this just part of the growing pains that we see with an expanding league? Any thoughts?
Mike?
Not an expert on women's rugby, but those are, oh boy, those are significant results. No, I mean, if this is happening every game, then yes, we need to have that discussion. But probably don't know too much to comment. But it's just great to see the Farrell Palmer Cup really, and it's gaining momentum. It's a good competition, and it's high time that women's rugby was put up there on similar stage to what the men's game is in New Zealand. So I'm just delighted that it's here and it's being played.
I think from my perspective, there are certain teams that are pretty well established in that competition and have been even before it was the Farrell Palmer Cup. There are certain club competitions that are much stronger than others. So you look at a team like Harbour, who have been on the end of some of those results. They don't have an established women's club competition. Their club sides play in the Auckland competition.
That's actually Harbour were on the end of that from Candida's Manukau, who have started very strongly. They backed up with a big win over Waikato last Wednesday night when they played as a, I don't know whether it was a warm-up game or whether it kind of as a warm-up match or a double header with the Counties Manukau Mitre 10 Cup game down there in Pukano, which I got to, and also Warren Gatlin got to as well. By the way, he was down there watching that Mitre 10 Cup game. And he didn't say hi. I mean, how rude of him. But it's been a bit strange, hasn't it? Because we had Canterbury beat Otago 27 at home. Then Otago go home and beats Tasman 82-0, where you saw Canterbury losing to Auckland 41-12. So they are a bit topsy-turvy in it. It does seem to be which team turns up on the night rather than necessarily, whilst you do have some consistent performers, it's not, they kind of have hot, and they do have sort of good nights and bad nights as well.
Something else to factor in too was that the opening round, I think a lot of the Black Ferns didn't play. So for some of the lesser sides, that don't have a lot of Black Ferns, they were missing those couple of key players, which never helps if you're a team lacking depth.
Yeah, no, I did see that they were that part of trying to organise the celebration of the Black Ferns winning the Women's Rugby World Cup was the problem was only 13 of the squad came straight home, and all the rest went on decided to do some sightseeing in Europe, which I think is obviously very, very good. I do also wonder, because they aren't professional at this level, do players have to miss some games because of job commitments and work commitments, and what sort of consistency we see in the rosters of the match day squads. I must admit, I'm not close enough to that competition to know that, but I could see that being another issue as well.
Just sort of wondering, Paul, do you want to respond to some of these comments in the live stream here? Because I've got a couple of things I want to say actually, but I thought I'd leave it up to you. I've been distracted talking on here, so I've not been following the live stream. So please feel free to bring out some of those comments and give me your responses. Okay, well, there's no depth for New Zealand women's rugby. Well, we just won the World Championship, so, and we've seen in the Farrell Palmer Cup there's some bloody good players. And in terms of it took the men's game years and years before going professional. Look, we're living in a different time now. I'm not 100% sure that the women's game should go professional in New Zealand, but I'm also saying that New Zealand rugby, there needs to be more of a financial commitment. There needs to be more of a marketing commitment. I mean, lack of depth in New Zealand women's rugby. I don't know, man.
Well, I guess another point I'd like to make on that one is that we've had 3 new teams added to the Farrell Palmer Cup competition this year. So it is a competition that's growing. I think it was 8 teams last year and it's 11 teams this year from memory. So it does take time for those teams to establish themselves, as we've seen with lots of other competitions. So you can't just you're not going to get depth overnight. And maybe there is depth for 8 teams, but maybe not depth for 11 yet. But we're growing it, and eventually, hopefully, we'll have teams. Maybe we'll have. Hopefully, every Mice 10 Cup team should have a women's team as well. Is my opinion. So I think there is some depth. The question is, how far does that go? I'm going to take a big wild stab in the dark because I've gone and forgotten them off the top of my head. But I think the England are just now setting up a new national league. I think that's 8 teams. Now they were the only professional team at the Women's Rugby World Cup. England is supposed to have the most rugby players of any union in the world, all this kind of blah. And yet they're talking about having a similar level of competition, a similar level of number of teams as the Farah Palmer Cup at the top level. So to talk about depth here, I think that there is clearly depth. They've won the Women's Rugby World Cup, but they're trying to pull off a competition that's as big as England are trying to pull off. But we know from population-wise, there aren't as many people here. So doing that takes a lot of effort and takes a lot of time to do.
I guess another issue when your competition is amateur is that how do you distribute players across the unions? So you look at a side like Auckland who have a good women's club competition. A lot of their players all play in that competition. There's nothing going to lure them to go and play for Harbour or Waikato or whoever, because they live in Auckland, they work in Auckland, they play for an Auckland club, they then play for Auckland, and that's just going to keep them strong until those other competitions and club sides develop. You're not going to get that competition.
Yep, and I guess if you have that, especially if you have the one of the reasons that I think it would be good to have the Black Ferns women's national teams to be professional is to have something to aspire to. Now, if you don't have an NPC team locally, how do you aspire to play for it as well? And that's so. Again, how do you keep people in your area rather than say they're having to travel to, if say Southland, for example, doesn't have a team. So any female players who aspire to play NPC or aspires to play Black Ferns have to move out of the area up to Otago at the closest to reach that level of competition, to play at that level. So by having a team locally, that gives players who can't move because of their jobs, whatever, the opportunity to aspire and play at that level. We've talked about where the money comes from and all that kind of stuff before. This is more, here we're talking more about the balance of the competition. We'll chat. We'll no doubt we'll come back to women's professionalism and money on another show. Sorry, I'm starting to run out of voice here. For those of you who are wondering, by the way, where all my prediction videos are, the reason that they aren't happening is twofold. One, I've got a full-time job at the moment, and B, I'm losing my voice. So I will try and get those out over the next few days. Any final points, guys, before we move on to our predictions?
None from me.
No, none from me.
Cool. Well, then let's kick off with the Rugby Championship, New Zealand versus South Africa. Guys, how do you see that one going?
All Blacks by 12.
Yeah, I think the All Blacks by about 18. It's going to be an interesting old game, isn't it? But I still think that they're looking for that complete performance. I don't know if you can ever actually sit back and say you play the complete game, but I've got a good feeling this weekend. So yeah, All Blacks by 18.
I've gone All Blacks by 10, so a bit more conservative than the two of you. Australia versus Argentina. So I'll jump
Australia,
in first.
Yeah, I'll just keep going first, eh?
Yep.
I'll say Australia by 20.
Ooh, gone big.
Australia by 12 or 13. There's a lot of work on for that team, man. And I mean, yep, they nearly beat the All Blacks, but short of that, it's been an interesting old time for them. Unlucky to get the draw, but yeah, I'm expecting them to win, but it won't be anything convincing.
Yeah, I'm expecting Wallabies by 10, so I'm going the same margin as New Zealand in both of those games. Again, yeah, this is clearly I think Argentina will have a bit of a hangover from the New Zealand game. I think their real opportunity is going to be back home and not in this one, but we'll see. Moving on to the Mitre 10 Cup. So on that much-loved Wednesday night fixture, Canterbury versus Counties. How do you see this one going?
I think this one might be a lot closer than people expect. 2 reasons. One, it's a Shield game. And 2, Counties just have a way of making games close and ugly and scrappy. I think Canterbury, but only by 12.
Yeah, I totally agree. Counties are in with a real shout in this one. But I think Canterbury will escape by about 7.
You've also remember that the Canterbury have to factor in they're going to be playing on the Sunday as well. So this is their doubling up round. I'm going to be Canterbury by 15 though on this one. I think Counties really have disappointed me this season after that close win over Auckland. They've had 3 losses since then. So yeah, I can't see them getting hold of that, getting hold of the Renfrew Shield. Northland versus North Harbour.
Harbour in a cakewalk.
Wow. And is a cakewalk 20, 30 or 40?
I would say maybe 17 or 18.
We're going to go Harbour by about 12.
See, for me, Northland have been impressive this season. They've definitely stepped up from where they were last year. I've been very impressed by them. And whilst before I just liked them, and especially their blue wigs, this year I actually impressed by their play as well. Even though I still don't think they're going to have enough to get over North Harbour, so I'm going to back North Harbour, but only by 5. I think it's going to stay within a score. Southland versus Auckland. From one end of the country to the other.
Poor Southland. I think this could be the week it finally clicks for Auckland. I think I've tipped Auckland by, I think in my Super Brew picks, I went something like 30. I went crazy high.
Whoa. Yeah, no, I'm not with you on that one. That's crazy. That's crazy talk.
I think Auckland. I got no respect for Southland. So gonna go with Auckland on this one.
Yeah, I'll go with Auckland as well. I don't think Southland will get up, but I don't think it's going to be anything like the blowout that Ryan's going for. I've gone by 5. I think I just can't. Auckland just haven't been far in the season, and yes, they'll get the win because they have much better quality players, but it's going to be a stuttering game. Taranaki versus a Bop, Bay of Plenty.
This was probably one of the hardest ones, I think, to judge, mainly because they're 2 teams that you don't know who's going to turn up on the day. I'll go with Taranaki, home advantage by 5.
Yeah, Taranaki, I think it might actually be a bit of a blowout. I've just got this feeling about it, but that's just a hunch on my part. Taranaki by 12. Is that a blowout? Probably not.
I've got Taranaki by 7. Yeah, as you say, these are sides that have that sometimes that have blown hot and cold, and you think kind of who have they turned the cold showers on for them or not to wake them up. We'll have to see if there's some dodgy things like that might that Taranaki play games on. Maybe that'll get the Bay of Plenty's angry, and maybe they'll have a chance. But I think yeah, I'm going Taranaki by 7. Waikato versus Manawatu.
I think this will be a real close game. Waikato been really poor last week. They were awful against Northland. I think I've tipped the Turbos actually in a close one. Turbos by 1.
Whoa.
A high school rugby team could have been in Waikato last week. I'm too scared to pick Waikato, but I got to have faith in my boys. By 8. There's no pre-planning these predictions. I just
Yeah, no, okay. For those of you who are listening on the podcast, Mike that was very much a kind of finger in the air. I've got no idea. Help, please help me. I'll just choose a number for that one from Mike. I think Waikato at home home advantage will be enough to see them get over Manawatu. I'm backing Waikato by 5. I don't think, they've had a poor season, but the Turbos aren't any great shakes either. Now, for me, this is the closest game of the round: Otago versus Tasman.
Big loss for Tasman with Tim Perry called into the All Blacks. I don't think he'll be released back. That's just another guy that they've lost. They've lost so much talent. I was pretty impressed that they were able to rally and win that game against Wellington. But I think Otago are going to sneak home in this one. Close game, though.
I'm going to go Tasman because I have a soft spot for Tasman, and that is why. I don't know, 5 or 6.
I've got Tasman by 2, and maybe I've been overly swayed by that game that they won last weekend. Detcom 20 says, by the way, guys, Napier Boys High won the secondary championship with the Nahola's little brother playing wing. So, hey, the pipeline is...
It was Hastings. It was the other Hawke's Bay team, not Napier.
Was it? Oh, he's got it. Oh, no. Okay. So we have our stat man here, which is great. So into the last 2 games then. Counties backing up again, having to play Hawke's Bay. How do you see this one going?
I think Counties win, but it's always, coming off a short turnaround. I think it'll be a lot closer than probably people expect. Just interesting, if they do win on Wednesday and then have to defend the Shield 4 days later, that's a big ask. But I think they'd win on Sunday no matter what, by 12.
God, there's still 2 games to go. Goodness me. I don't know, Counties.
I'm with Ryan on this. The turnaround is going to hurt Counties. Hawke's Bay have not impressed, but I've gone Counties by 3. But that's a great thought if they did have the Shield, and I might actually try and head down there for that game if it becomes a Shield game. I bet Counties by 3. I think it'll be close because of that midweek game and that short turnaround. And the final one, 2 teams. Wellington were high flying, and they're hosting Canterbury this one.
This is your result to get Harbour that home final. Wellington by 3.
Ooh.
Oh, who is it? Wellington, Canterbury. I'll go Canterbury by 9.
Scott, you have little faith in the live chat there. Paul is the only one who has prepared his picks. No, Ryan's prepared his as well. He's just forgotten to look at them.
That's correct.
Wellington versus Canterbury. I'm backing Canterbury by 7. Again, I think I would have gone for a bigger margin if they hadn't had the midweek game. But I think, that's going to tell on them. We are talking a Premiership team against Championship team. So I think, we're looking at Canterbury by 7 there. So, guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me. This weekend, I will also be back live straight after the All Blacks versus the Springboks with Mike for a post-game review. And I'll be back straight after the Wallabies versus the Pumas, at the moment on my own. But hey, maybe I'll be able to rustle up a guest to go through that game with me as well. But Mike, between now and then, how should people get hold of you?
Oh, cool. Yeah, great chat tonight, guys. Follow me on Twitter at Real Mike Pullman. And I'm so close to 500. I know I'm not meant to talk about that. I'm 2 followers away. So please help me get over the line. lastwordonrugby.com for all your latest rugby news and views and opinions. So, yeah.
Cool. And Ryan, where can people get hold of you and see all your and get your wonderful app as well?
Yes, you can follow me on Twitter at New York Nixon, and then download Tribe Sports app. You can find it in the App Store or the Play Store. I'll be covering just about all the Mitre 10 Cup this weekend, as well as the All Blacks. So, and we've got all your live scores for European and NRC as well.
Cool. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I've been Paul, the guy behind Driving Maul. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast through your favorite podcast app. And if you do listen to it through iTunes, Apple Podcasts, whatever it's called nowadays, please do give us a review. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Give it the old thumbs up. That also helps get the word out there and get everyone to join us and come and see the wonderful stuff that we do. We'll be back next Tuesday. Obviously, I'll be back after those 2 games this weekend, and also back next Tuesday at 8 p.m. with the Hash Rugby Chat one more time. So thank you very much for everybody for joining us, and have a great week watching rugby.